At the new school, my daughter was mocked for the dress she had to wear, handed down from her older sister. The teachers pretended nothing had happened, but when they saw who had come to pick her up after class, their jaws dropped. Boxes! Those damn boxes were everywhere. They filled every corner of our new apartment, turning the already tiny space into a kind of labyrinth made of cardboard and packing tape. I sat in the middle of the living room, if 13 square meters could be called that, trying not to cry. Again. My name is Sarah Thompson. Just 6 months ago, I had a husband, Michael, a beautiful house in the Boston suburbs, and a life many would have called successful, though we ourselves knew just how fragile that stability really was. Now, I have 2 daughters, 3 jobs, and this apartment in a neighborhood whose name I couldn't even pronounce properly until recently. Mom, where should I put this box? Emily, my 16-year-old daughter, stood in the doorway holding a huge cardboard box. Her face, so much like Michael's, had grown gaunt over the past few months. She had grown up far too fast. Just put it down somewhere, sweetheart. We'll deal with it later. Emily gently placed the box against the wall and sat down beside me on the floor. Our knees touched, and I felt a pang in my chest. When was the last time we sat like this? Before the funeral? The hospital? That cursed phone call that split my life into a before and after? Where's Lily? I asked, remembering my younger daughter. Exploring her room. I think she likes that she finally has her own window. I let out a bitter chuckle. A 12-year-old child, excited over a window, as if it were the height of luxury. In our old house, the one we were still paying off before the bank took it, she had a bedroom the size of our current kitchen, a walk-in closet, and her own bathroom. Now she has a window, and that's all I can give her. After Michael died, everything collapsed so quickly I barely had time to process it. We had insurance, but 3 months before the accident, Michael had switched jobs, and the new life insurance policy was still in the activation process. It wouldn't have kicked in fully for another 6 months. Because of that bureaucratic detail, the insurance only covered his medical expenses, nothing more. Even getting that payout took endless calls and battles with the company. 2 years earlier, we had poured all our savings into renovating the house, replacing the roof, and fixing the sinking foundation. Michael insisted we take out a loan against the house to do it right. It's an investment in our stability, he said. We had just started to rebuild our financial cushion when he got the offer for a higher-paying job, one that seemed like it would finally solve our money troubles. His salary was our main income. My part-time job at a design agency couldn't even cover half the monthly payments on our mortgage and renovation loan. After his death, I was left with 2 massive debts, no savings, and a meager insurance payout that barely covered the medical bills. The bank gave us 6 weeks to vacate the house. 6 weeks to bury our old life and start a new one. In a city where no one knew us, where the rent was 3 times cheaper, and where the schools, according to online reviews, met basic educational standards. Not excellent, not outstanding, just standard. That's all I could afford now. Mom. Lily's voice broke through my bleak thoughts. She stood in the doorway of her tiny room, panic in her eyes. The box with my clothes. It got soaked. Everything's moldy. I jumped up and rushed to her. Sure enough, the cardboard box labeled Lily's clothes was falling apart. Damn rain. We had moved the last of our things in the pouring rain, and some boxes had gotten soaked before we could drag them inside. I tore open the soggy cardboard and gasped. Almost all of Lily's clothes were covered in black mold, jeans, t-shirts, sweaters, ruined. What now? Lily whispered, her voice trembling. School starts tomorrow. Emily came over and gently wrapped an arm around her sister. You can wear my clothes, she offered. We're almost the same size. Lily pulled away from the hug and looked at me with pleading eyes. Mom, no, please. You know Emily's clothes. What about them? Emily's voice had a steel edge. They're old-fashioned, Lily whispered, eyes downcast. I'm sorry, but they are. You don't wear anything normal. In another situation, I might have laughed. Emily really did prefer a vintage style. Midi skirts, blouses with bows, floral print dresses, all hilariously out of trend among teens now obsessed with sportswear and oversized everything. "We don't have a choice, Lily." I tried to sound calm, but weeks of stress and exhaustion made my voice sharp. "We don't have money for new clothes right now. Maybe in a month or two, when I get my first paycheck at the new job." "A month?" Lily's eyes widened in horror. "But school starts tomorrow. I can't go in She glanced quickly at her sister. "In those clothes." "Lily," I knelt down to her eye level. "Listen to me. I know this is hard. I know you're scared to go to a new school, but right now we need to be strong, all of us. Dad's not here," Lily shouted, tears welling in her eyes. "He's gone, and he's never coming back. And I have to go to school tomorrow in a frilly dress like I'm stuck in the 80s. She turned and ran out of the room, slamming the door of her new bedroom behind her. I sank wearily to the floor, surrounded by moldy clothes and torn cardboard. Emily sat down beside me in silence. "She'll be okay," she said softly. "She just needs time." "Time is exactly what we don't have." I shook my head. "She's starting school tomorrow, and you're right. She's going to have to wear your clothes. We don't have another option." The night passed in tension. Lily refused to eat dinner and didn't come out of her room. I could hear her muffled sobs through the thin wall. Emily rummaged through her wardrobe, trying to find something that looked the least outdated for her sister. In the end, she chose a dark blue dress with a white collar and cuffs. She had worn it on her first day of high school. Now it was too small for her, but it almost fit Lily, except for the slightly long sleeves. Monday morning dawned painfully bright, as if nature itself were mocking our bleak mood. Lily stood in front of the hallway mirror, staring at herself like she was looking at a ghost. "I look like a doll," she whispered. "An old dusty doll from a thrift shop." "You look beautiful," I lied, adjusting the collar of her dress. "Very elegant." The dress was hopelessly outdated. Its dark navy hue made Lily's pale skin look even paler, and the prim cut made her seem years older, or worse, decades. I imagined her walking into a classroom full of kids in tracksuits and jeans, and my heart clenched. "Mom," she murmured, barely audible, "please don't make me." I closed my eyes. 1,000 options raced through my mind. Borrow money? From whom? All our friends were back in Boston, and I couldn't bring myself to call them and admit how bad things had gotten. Credit cards? Maxed out to cover the move? Sell something? What did we have left of value? "Lily," I said, placing my hands on her shoulders, "I promise things will change soon. I'll get my first paycheck and we'll buy you new clothes. But today, you have to be strong. For me, for Dad." The last part was a low blow, and I knew it. But it worked. Lily swallowed her tears and nodded. "Okay," she whispered, "but just for today." When we pulled up to the school, a shabby red brick building with a faded flag above the entrance, I felt Lily stiffen beside me. "It'll be okay?" I squeezed her hand. "You're the smartest, most beautiful girl in the world. No one will dare—" "Please don't," she interrupted. "Let's just get it over with." She stepped out of the car, clutching her new backpack, the only new thing we'd been able to buy for school. I watched her walk toward the entrance, shoulders straight, head held high, so small and so brave. And I knew, felt it in every fiber of my mother's heart, that this day would test her, a test I had forced on her with my inability to provide a normal life. All day, I couldn't concentrate on work. My thoughts kept circling back to Lily. Every time the phone rang, I jumped, expecting a call from the school. My supervisor at the design agency where I now worked remotely asked twice if I was okay. After Michael died, I tried to find a full-time job as a designer, but the market in our new city was oversaturated, and studios preferred hiring young designers with fresh ideas, willing to work for less. My experience and 5-year-old portfolio felt outdated. When it was time to pick Lily up, I left 30 minutes early to avoid any chance of being late in traffic. Parked outside the school, I drummed my fingers on the steering wheel, scanning the crowd of children, and when I finally saw her, my heart dropped. Lily was walking with her head down, clutching her backpack to her chest like a shield. Even from a distance, I could see she had been crying. Her shoulders trembled, and her face was red and swollen. I jumped out of the car and ran to her. "Lily, what happened?" She collapsed into my arms, sobbing. I held her close, feeling her fragile body shake, trying to ignore the glances from the other parents. In the car, Lily finally started to speak, her words broken by sniffles. They all laughed. Her voice cracked. First, when I walked into the classroom, then during recess. One girl, Amanda, said I must have escaped from a wax museum. Another asked if I came early for Halloween. Each word was a knife to the heart. I gripped the steering wheel tighter so Lily wouldn't see how my hands were shaking. "What about the teachers?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay calm. "Did they do anything?" Lily let out a bitter laugh, a sound that had no place on the face of a 12-year-old. Mrs. Parker, the homeroom teacher, pretended nothing was happening when Amanda and her little group loudly joked about whether I was Morticia Adams's daughter. She just turned away and started writing on the board. I bit my lip so hard I tasted blood. The memories hit me all at once. My own first day at a new school when I was 14. The same mockery, the same indifferent teachers, the same burning shame that had haunted me for years. "Lily," I tried to find the right words, but there were none. "I'm so sorry. This is my fault. I should have found a way." "Don't, Mom." She shook her head. "I know we don't have money. I know you're doing your best. I don't want to go back there." Ever. At home, Emily was already waiting. She had come back earlier from her own first day at the new high school, and judging by her face, it hadn't gone much better. But when she saw her younger sister's tear-streaked face, she immediately forgot about her own problems. "What happened?" she asked as Lily walked past her in silence and disappeared into her room. I briefly explained what had happened, and with every word, Emily's face darkened. "It's my fault," she said when I finished. "My stupid, outdated clothes." "No, it's my fault," I shook my head. "I should have found the money for new clothes. I should have protected her." We sat in the kitchen, staring at each other across the tiny dining table. Two women crushed by guilt. A mother and daughter, unable to protect the youngest member of their family. "I'm going to call her teacher," I said, breaking the heavy silence. "This is unacceptable." Emily nodded, but I saw the doubt in her eyes. She didn't believe it would change anything, and honestly, neither did I. I dialed the school's number, which had already etched itself into my memory after just one day, and asked to be connected to Mrs. Parker. After a few minutes on hold, a tired female voice came through. "Mrs. Parker, speaking." "Hello, this is Sarah Thompson, Lily's mother. It was her first day in your class today." "Oh yes, the new girl," she said, her voice devoid of warmth or interest. "How can I help you?" "My daughter came home in tears. She told me she was mocked all day for her clothes, and you did nothing to stop it." There was a pause. Then Mrs. Parker sighed. "Mrs. Thompson, I understand your concern, but believe me, kids always tease the new ones. It's a normal part of adjusting. In a week, no one will even remember Lily's new, and they'll move on to something else." I clenched my teeth, feeling a wave of anger rising inside me. "You're suggesting my daughter endure bullying for a whole week? That's your professional advice as an educator?" "I'm suggesting we not over-dramatize the situation." Her voice grew colder. "We don't have a bullying problem at our school. Perhaps your daughter should, how can I put this, try to blend in more. Her clothing is quite unusual for our times." I closed my eyes and counted to 10 to keep myself from screaming. "So you're shifting responsibility to a 12-year-old child? What next? Should she change her eye color or the shape of her nose to blend in better?" "Mrs. Thompson," she replied, as if explaining something obvious to someone dim-witted. "I understand moving can be stressful, but let's not create problems where there are none. Give Lily time to adjust, and everything will be fine." Before I could respond, she quickly added, "Sorry, I have a meeting. Goodbye." And she hung up. I sat there, staring at the phone in my hand, feeling tears burn behind my eyes. Emily silently came over and wrapped an arm around my shoulders. "She's not going to help, is she?" she asked quietly. I shook my head. "No one ever helps people like us," I said, surprised even by the bitterness in my own voice. "We're just invisible. A problem that's easier to ignore than to fix." Emily pulled away and looked me in the eye. In her gaze, I saw a determination I hadn't seen since Michael was alive. "Then we'll fix it ourselves," she said firmly. "I have money. I was saving up for a new laptop, but that can wait. We're buying Lily new clothes." "No," I protested immediately. "This is my problem, not yours. You shouldn't have to spend your savings." "We're a family," Emily interrupted me. "And Lily is my sister. If I can help her, I will. And you can't stop me." I looked at her, so grown up, so strong, and felt a wave of pride and shame all at once. Pride in the amazing young woman she had become, and shame that she was solving problems that should have been mine to solve. "No," I shook my head. "I'll find another way. Maybe I can pick up extra shifts at the supermarket." "When?" Emily's voice had a steely edge. "You're already working 16 hours a day. When are you going to fit in those extra shifts? Between midnight and sunrise?" She was right, and we both knew it. I was already working at my absolute limit. One more shift would break me. "There has to be another way," I whispered, not believing my own words. At that moment, Lily's door opened and she stepped out. Her eyes were still red from crying, but there was something new in them now, determination, mirroring the look on her sister's face. "I'll go to school tomorrow," she said quietly, "and I'll wear the same dress." "Lily, no," I began, but she raised her hand to stop me. "If they want to laugh at my clothes, let them. I can't change the fact that we don't have money, but I can change how I feel about it, and I won't let them see that it hurts me." I looked at my younger daughter and saw in her a strength I thought I had long lost. A strength that had always lived in Michael, and clearly he had passed it down to our daughters. "Are you sure?" I asked, my throat tightening with unshed tears. Lily nodded and turned to Emily. "Just help me do something with my hair, okay? Something that looks cool." Emily smiled, and that smile was the first ray of light in what had felt like an endlessly dark day. "Oh, I've got ideas," she said, wrapping her arm around her sister's shoulder. "We'll make you into such a vintage queen that those trendy kids will be green with envy." I watched my daughters support each other, and I felt a flicker of hope ignite in my chest. Maybe we had lost the house, the money, and the life we used to know. But we were still a family, and maybe, just maybe, that would be enough to survive whatever trials lay ahead. But deep inside, I knew tomorrow would bring Lily new tears, and I hated myself for not being able to protect her from that pain, for making my daughter be stronger than any 12-year-old should ever have to be, for forcing her to learn so early just how cruel the world could be. And I made myself a promise. I would find a way to change this, no matter what it took. A week had passed since Lily started at her new school. 7 endlessly long days during which I watched my little girl slowly fade. Each evening, she came home more withdrawn, her shoulders sinking lower, the sparkle in her eyes dimming. Her bravery was wearing thin under the constant barrage of mockery and cruelty. I tried to lift her spirits as best I could. Every morning, Emily came up with a new hairstyle to freshen up Lily's look. We altered collars, added pins, and scarves made from leftover fabric scraps. But nothing could hide the obvious. Lily was stuck wearing outdated, ill-fitting clothes in a school where appearance meant almost everything. On Friday morning, while taking out the trash before heading to work, I noticed something navy blue peeking out from under a bread wrapper. My heart froze. I recognized Emily's dress at once, the one Lily had been wearing. Carefully pulling it out of the bin, I gasped in horror. The dress had been cruelly vandalized, the white collar half torn off, one sleeve ripped along the seam, and across the hem, written in marker, were the words, "Greetings from the last century." I stood in the middle of the kitchen, clutching the mutilated dress. feeling a wave of rage and helplessness rise inside me. "Lily!" I called, trying to keep my voice steady, though everything in me was boiling. She stepped out of her room already dressed for school, in Emily's rolled-up jeans and a stretched-out sweater. When she saw the torn dress in my hands, she froze like a startled fawn, her face turning pale as chalk. "I can explain," she whispered, lowering her eyes. I took a deep breath, trying to suppress the anger that wasn't meant for her, but for the impossible situation we were trapped in. "Who did this?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Lily was silent, nervously fiddling with her sweater sleeve. "You did it, didn't you?" I asked, my voice softening. She nodded, and I saw her chin begin to tremble. "I couldn't wear it anymore, Mom," she said barely above a whisper. "Not after yesterday." "What happened yesterday?" I stepped closer and gently placed my hands on her shoulders. Lily looked up at me, her eyes brimming with tears. "They filmed me," she swallowed, "walking down the hallway in that dress." Amanda pointed her phone at me and told her friends, "Look, a documentary about dinosaurs." They all laughed. And then they added some old music and special effects, like I was an exhibit in a museum, and they posted it in the school group chat. Fashion fail of the year, that's what they called it. Each word pierced my heart like a poisoned arrow. I pictured my little girl, trying to keep her head high while being mocked and recorded. I was overwhelmed with shame and rage. "Why didn't you tell me?" I wrapped her in my arms. "I didn't want to upset you even more," Lily whispered, burying her face in my chest. "You already look so tired and sad all the time." Those words shattered the last of my composure. My 12-year-old daughter had been silently suffering just to protect me. That was wrong on every possible level. "You're staying home today," I said firmly, pulling back to look her in the eyes. "And I'm going to the school to speak with the principal. This can't go on." "But Mom, your job—" "Work can wait," I said, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "You're more important." I called in and explained I was taking a day off for family reasons. Emily, already dressed for her own classes, offered to stay with her sister, but I insisted she go to school. One absence in the family was enough for today. Jefferson School looked even more unwelcoming in the cold morning light. The secretary in the front office gave me a once-over, her gaze lingering on my worn-out jacket and plain jeans before asking about the purpose of my visit. "I need to speak with Principal Collins. It's urgent," I said, doing my best to keep my voice steady and confident. "Mr. Collins has a very tight schedule." She pursed her lips. "May I ask what this is regarding?" "Bullying. My daughter is being harassed, and your staff is doing nothing about it." My voice came out harsher than I had intended. Her expression didn't change, but she picked up the phone and, after a brief exchange, pointed toward the office door. "Mr. Collins can spare you 5 minutes." The principal's office was pretentious. Heavy, dark wood desk, leather chairs, walls lined with diplomas and certificates. The air carried a faint smell of cigarettes and cheap cologne. Principal Collins, a portly man with thinning hair and a ruddy face, greeted me without a smile. "Mrs. Thompson," he gestured toward the chair across from him. "How can I help you?" I sat down, placing my bag on my lap. I noticed his eyes briefly scan my modest clothing before meeting mine again. "I'm here about my daughter, Lily. She's being systematically bullied at your school, and no one is doing anything to stop it." The principal leaned back in his chair with the weariness of someone who's heard this all before. "Mrs. Thompson, I understand your concern, but rest assured, there is no bullying problem at our school. We have strict conduct policies and—" I pulled Lily's torn dress from my bag and laid it on his desk, cutting off his stream of empty reassurances. "And what do you call this?" He looked at the vandalized dress with mild annoyance, as if I had placed something inappropriate on his pristine desk. "I'm sorry, but I'm not an expert on women's fashion," he said with a thin, condescending smile. "This is the result of bullying, Mr. Collins." My voice trembled with restrained fury. My daughter felt forced to destroy her own clothing because of the mockery she endured. She's being filmed and mocked online, and your teachers are pretending nothing is happening. He let out a deep sigh, as though preparing to explain something obvious to a slow learner. "Mrs. Thompson, if I may offer some advice." He lowered his voice as though about to share a secret. "Our school is located in a district where certain standards are the norm. This neighborhood is considered prestigious, and most of our students come from well-off families. They're accustomed to a certain lifestyle." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You're justifying the bullying of my daughter because she's not as wealthy as the others?" He raised his hands in a placating gesture. "I'm simply stating facts. Your family clearly doesn't fit the local standards. Your daughter stands out, and unfortunately, not in a good way. Naturally, that provokes a reaction from other children." "Naturally?" I nearly shouted. "Mocking a child because of her clothes seems natural to you?" "Look," his tone hardened, "I understand you're going through difficult times, but perhaps you should consider transferring your daughter to a school with a more diverse population. There's a very decent school in the neighboring district that might be more suitable for families with limited means." I felt my face flush with heat. "You have no right. That's discrimination." "I'm not expelling anyone," he said, spreading his hands. "I'm simply offering options that may be more comfortable for all parties involved. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have another meeting scheduled." He glanced demonstratively at his watch, clearly signaling the end of the conversation. I stood up, trembling with rage and humiliation, grabbed the torn dress, and walked out of the office without another word. In the hallway, a group of teenage girls passed by, dressed in pristine designer clothes. They gave my worn outfit a quick, appraising look before turning away, whispering and giggling. And in that moment, I truly felt what Lily endured every day. Outside, I took several deep breaths, trying to calm myself. My phone rang just as I got into the car. Seeing the number from the design agency, my heart clenched. "Hello? Sarah, it's Rebecca," came the HR manager's tense voice. "I need you to join a video conference in 15 minutes. It's important." My heart started pounding. "What's going on?" "Please just join." Her tone left no room for further questions. "I'll send you the link." I rushed home, where Lily was sitting quietly in front of the TV, not really watching. I explained that I had to join a work call and went into the bedroom where my work laptop was set up. When I connected to the video conference, 3 people were already waiting on the screen: Rebecca, Marcus, the CFO I'd only seen in company photos, and David, my direct supervisor, who avoided looking into the camera. "Sarah, thank you for joining," Rebecca began in an official tone. "Unfortunately, we have some news that affects you directly." I already knew what she was going to say. Rumors about layoffs had been circulating in the company for the past 2 months, and I had noticed managers avoiding making long-term plans with me. "The company is undergoing restructuring, and we're forced to reduce part of the staff," Rebecca continued. "Unfortunately, your position is among those being eliminated." Even though I had expected those words, hearing them out loud still hit like a physical blow. This job was my main source of income, covering more than half of our already stretched budget. I just moved," I said weakly. "I have 2 children to support." Marcus nodded with rehearsed sympathy. "We understand your situation and deeply regret the necessity of these measures. The company will offer standard severance, 2 weeks' pay, and of course, will provide a reference for future opportunities." 2 weeks. 2 weeks' pay for 5 years of loyal work, most of which I spent sacrificing my personal time and time with my family. "When does this take effect?" I asked, trying to collect my scattered thoughts. "As of today," David replied, finally looking at me. "You'll receive an email with the details about severance and handover procedures." The rest of the conversation passed in a blur. I nodded, agreed, thanked them for the opportunities the company had supposedly provided me over the years. I acted professionally to the end, like a responsible adult should. But inside, a black hole of panic and despair was growing. When the screen went dark, I remained seated, staring into nothing. The reality of what had just happened slowly settled in. I had lost my job, my primary source of income, our health insurance. the ability to pay for even this tiny apartment. Tears stung my eyes, but I blinked them back. I couldn't cry. I couldn't afford to fall apart. I still had 2 other jobs, cashier at the supermarket and remote admin work. They didn't cover even half of our expenses, but they were something. I'd been trying to update my design skills, studying new programs late at night when the girls were asleep, but I had neither time nor money for full retraining. The door creaked softly, and Lily peeked in. "Mom?" Her voice was quiet, uncertain. "Are you okay? You look really pale." I tried to smile, but my lips wouldn't cooperate. "It's okay, sweetheart. Just work stuff." Lily walked into the room and sat down next to me on the bed. "Is it because of me? Because you took the day off to go to school?" "No." I pulled her into a hug. "Of course not. It's just a coincidence." "What happened, Mom?" Her eyes were filled with a worry no 12-year-old should ever have to feel. I wanted to lie. I wanted to protect her from adult problems, but I was so exhausted, emotionally, physically, financially, that I just couldn't hold it in anymore. "I got fired," I whispered, and finally the tears came. "I lost my job, my main job." Lily hugged me, and I felt how, somehow, our roles had reversed. She was the one comforting me now, stroking my back, whispering that everything would be okay. That upside-down reality, where the child supports the parent, made me sob even harder. I don't know how long I cried before the sobs finally faded into quiet sniffles. Lily was still holding my hand when the door opened again, and Emily walked in, just home from school. She immediately grasped what was happening when she saw my tear-streaked face. "What happened?" she asked, dropping her backpack on the floor and sitting on the other side of me. Lily explained the situation in short, practical phrases that sounded absurdly grown up coming from her. "So what now?" Emily asked, looking straight into my eyes. I shook my head. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I really don't know." That simple admission unleashed another storm of emotions. I, the adult, the mother, the sole provider for this family, had no idea what to do next. How to pay the bills, how to buy food, how to care for my children. "I'm not managing," the words burst out like a dam breaking. "I lost my job, we have no money, Lily is being bullied at school, I'm a terrible mother, Dad would have known what to do, he always knew, and me, I just can't anymore." I started crying again, unable to hold it in. All the tension of the past few months, all the fear, all the pain, it all poured out in that moment of complete despair. Emily and Lily wrapped their arms around me, and we sat like that. The 3 Thompson women, united by grief and fear of an uncertain future. "I could drop out of school and find a job," Emily offered, her voice so serious it made my heart ache. "No," I protested immediately. "Don't even think about it." "We could sell my tablet," Lily said softly. "Dad said it was expensive." The tablet had been Michael's last gift to her before he died. The fact that Lily was willing to part with it shattered me. "No, sweetheart, we'll find another way." But I had no idea what that way could be. I was already stretched to my limits, working 3 jobs. Now, without the main one, the future looked hopelessly dark. 3 days passed since I was fired. I sent out my resume to every design agency I could find, but there had been no responses. Every day, I checked my email, hoping for some sign of interest. On the evening of the 3rd day, my phone rang, an unfamiliar number with an international code. I was going to ignore it, but Emily insisted. It might be important. "Hello?" My voice was hoarse with fatigue. "Sarah, is that you? It's James. James Mitchell." I froze when I heard the name. James had been my colleague and close friend at the first design agency I ever worked at, 10 years ago, before Michael. We had been very close, so close that many people assumed we were a couple, though we had never crossed that line officially. When I met Michael and fell in love, James had taken it hard, though he never admitted it openly. Shortly after our wedding, he moved to Europe to advance his career, and we hadn't spoken since. "James?" I couldn't believe my ears. Where did you? Actually, it's a funny coincidence. His voice was warm and confident, unchanged by the years. I'm currently expanding the design department in our regional office. Our HR director, Carol, remember her? She worked with us back at the old studio. She spotted your resume in the candidate database while going through hundreds of applications. She was so excited, she came straight to me and said, "James, you won't believe who's looking for work." I couldn't believe the coincidence either. And by the way, your recent projects for April Corporation were really impressive. I saw their feature in a design journal last year. Fate has a strange way of working things out, he continued after a pause. I've been meaning to reach out to you for years, but life always got in the way. And then suddenly your resume lands on my desk. You must have updated it recently? Yes, I lost my job a few days ago. I'm sorry to hear that, he said with a frown. But frankly, their loss is my gain. I've been looking for someone with your experience and vision. His voice was full of genuine sympathy, and I felt my throat tighten again as tears threatened to rise. It's okay, James. It's been a long time. Sarah, I'm not calling out of the blue, he continued after a pause. I need a talented designer for a new project, someone with your unique vision and sense of style. I still remember your work for Reinhardt Industries 10 years ago. That campaign is still considered a classic in design circles. I'd like to offer you the position of senior designer to start, with room for growth. The job is fully remote, and the salary significantly above market. I listened in disbelief as he described the role, exactly the kind of opportunity I had only dared to dream about. A job that would not only solve our financial crisis, but let me return to doing something I truly loved. Why me? I asked when he finished. You could hire any top-tier designer. Why are you looking for me? James was silent for a second, then said quietly, "Because no one sees the world the way you do, Sarah, and because I've never stopped thinking about you all these years." I sat frozen, the phone pressed to my ear, feeling something inside me slowly begin to thaw for the first time in months. James had always been a road not fully taken. Michael was the love of my life, and I never regretted my choice. But James had always been something different. Calmer, clearer, safer. I'm not asking for anything more, he quickly added as if he could read my thoughts. This is just a job, a chance for you, and for your girls. How do you know about my daughters? I asked, surprised. I've kept an eye on your career from time to time, he said, sounding a little embarrassed. Saw photos on social media when you posted them. They're beautiful, Sarah. They look like you. I didn't know what to say. Part of me was touched that he remembered me after all these years. Another part was wary. It all felt too perfectly timed, like magic appearing at the darkest hour. I need to think, James, I said finally. This is all very sudden. Of course, his voice was understanding. Here's my personal number. Call me whenever you're ready to talk. And Sarah, whatever you decide, I'm just glad I found you again. When the call ended, I sat there staring at the phone in my hand, feeling a strange mix of hope and fear. Emily and Lily were watching me with curiosity. Who was that? Emily asked. An old friend, I said, still in disbelief. A very old friend who might have just offered a solution to all our problems. Really? Lily's voice held a note of hope I hadn't heard in days. I nodded, feeling a small flame rekindle inside me, one I'd long thought extinguished. Maybe, I said, allowing myself a smile for the first time in weeks. But it's almost too good to be true. Things like this don't happen in real life. What if they do? Emily leaned in. What if this is your chance, Mom? Our chance. I looked at my daughters, their faces full of trust and hope, and realized I didn't have the right to ignore this opportunity, no matter how unexpected or surreal it felt. Then we'll have to take it, I said, hugging them both tightly. Even if I have no idea where it's going to lead us. But in that moment, sitting in our tiny bedroom with my daughters in my arms, I felt, perhaps for the first time in months, that we did have a future. That maybe Michael's death wasn't the end of our story, but the beginning of a new chapter. And maybe, just maybe, this chapter wouldn't be as dark as I feared. A week had passed since that strange phone call that turned my life upside down. 7 days filled with equal parts hope and doubt. After a lot of thought, I agreed to meet James in person to discuss the job offer. He suggested a small cafe downtown, a neutral space, which I appreciated. Seeing him after all these years stirred a strange mix of emotions. James had changed. His once unruly chestnut hair was now neatly cut, with a touch of gray at the temples that gave him a distinguished look. The lines around his eyes had deepened, but his smile was the same, open and sincere, with a hint of that charming uncertainty I had always found endearing. "Sarah," he stood as I approached the table, "thank you for coming." We exchanged a slightly awkward hug, and I caught the faint scent of his cologne, woody and subtle. 10 years later, and he still avoided the heavy fragrances I never liked. "You look wonderful," he said as we sat down. I couldn't help but smile at the polite lie behind that phrase. Every morning, the mirror showed me the truth: dark circles under my eyes, premature wrinkles, and gray hair I could no longer afford to dye. "No need for flattery, James. I know what I look like." He leaned in slightly, his gaze growing serious. "I'm not flattering you, Sarah. You've always been beautiful to me." Something in his voice made me believe him, and I felt a blush rise to my cheeks. To hide my embarrassment, I steered the conversation toward business. "You mentioned a job?" James nodded, and his face lit up. He began to tell me about his company, Mitchell Design Group, which had grown from the small studio we once worked at together into an international firm with offices in London, New York, and Tokyo. He spoke of projects, clients, the company's design philosophy, and I saw in his eyes the same passion for creativity that had once brought us together. "I need a creative director for a new division," he said finally. "Someone with your eye for the world and your sense of style. It's a demanding role, high responsibility, but it's worth it." "Why me?" I asked directly. "There are thousands of talented designers out there. Many of them are younger, more experienced with modern tech, not juggling family responsibilities." James looked at me for a long time, as if weighing how honest to be. "Because no one sees the world the way you do," he said at last. "And because," he took a deep breath, "because I never stopped thinking about you, Sarah, all these years." I froze, staring at him wide-eyed. "What do you mean?" "I was in love with you," he said quietly. "From the day you walked into that tiny studio with a portfolio under your arm and rain-wrecked hair. But then, Michael came along, and I saw the way you looked at him, the way your eyes lit up. You never looked at me like that." I didn't know what to say. I had always suspected his feelings, but he'd never spoken them aloud. "James, No, please, let me finish." He raised his hand gently. "I respected your choice. I respected your marriage. That's why I left. I couldn't stand watching you be happy with someone else, even though I truly wished you all the happiness in the world. I know Michael was the love of your life. I never tried to compete with that." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "When I heard about his passing, I wanted to reach out immediately, but I was afraid it would seem inappropriate, that you'd think I was taking advantage. So I waited, and then, by pure chance, I saw your resume in the database, and it felt like a sign." I sat there, stunned by his confession. All these years, he had kept his feelings private, allowing me to build a life with another man without ever making me uncomfortable. It was an act of love so quiet, so selfless, it took my breath away. "But I'm not offering you this job because of the past," he added quickly, sensing my hesitation. "I genuinely believe you're an exceptional designer. This is a real role with real responsibilities. I don't expect anything personal in return. I just want to help." "You already tried to help me once," I recalled. "When you asked me to come to Europe with you, I said no. And I respected your decision." He nodded. "Just like I'll respect whatever you decide now." I exhaled deeply. It was complicated. On one hand, I desperately needed the job. On the other, accepting help from someone who had just confessed his long-standing feelings felt questionable, especially when my grief for Michael was still raw. James, I appreciate the offer, but I don't want you to think you can buy my affection. I've never thought that. He looked genuinely surprised. I just want to help you get back on your feet. What you're going through is unfair, and if I can ease that burden, I want to. If you're offering me charity, I'm offering you a job, Sarah. His voice grew firmer. A job you more than deserve. Your talent has been overlooked for too long. I've followed your work all these years, even the smaller freelance projects. And the way you've adapted to new technologies while juggling part-time roles, it's impressive. I looked at him for a long moment, searching for any hidden motive. But all I saw was sincerity and care. I could offer you a loan if this is just a short-term struggle, he added. But I have a feeling you're too proud for that. I gave a faint smile. You've always known me well. So, what about the job? His eyes were full of hope. I thought of Lily and Emily, of our tiny apartment, of the dress torn in despair, of the school principal hinting we didn't belong in their world. I accept your offer, I said at last, but just the job, nothing more. The relief on his face was almost comical. Of course, just the job. Can you start Monday? I'll send you all the details. Mitchell Design Group's office occupied the top 3 floors of a glass skyscraper in the city's business district. The receptionist, a stylish woman with flawless makeup and hair, greeted me with a professional smile. How can I help you? I'm Sarah Thompson. I have a meeting with James Mitchell. Her demeanor instantly changed. She straightened up and smiled again, this time with a new tone, respectful, and maybe even a little curious. Of course, Ms. Thompson. Mr. Mitchell is expecting you. Let me escort you. We rode the high-speed elevator to the top floor. When the doors opened, I saw a spacious office flooded with natural light from floor-to-ceiling windows. Designers worked at ergonomic desks with huge monitors, and the air was filled with that creative energy I had missed so much. Sarah, I'm glad you came. Over these 3 months at the company, you've exceeded all my expectations. The team is thrilled with your leadership on the Allison Court project. So, I've made a decision. Come, let me show you your new office. He led me through the open space where a few designers glanced up with curiosity as we passed. We reached a corner office with 2 glass walls offering a stunning view of the city. This is your workspace, James said, opening the door. I froze at the threshold. The office was tastefully furnished. A modern desk made of light wood, a comfortable leather chair, stylish bookshelves filled with design volumes, and, most breathtaking of all, a brand new Apple computer with 2 massive monitors and a top-of-the-line graphic tablet. James, this is standard equipment for a creative director. He shrugged casually, but I could see he was pleased with my reaction. On the desk was a folder bearing the company logo. James nodded toward it. Inside, you'll find your promotion contract, compensation package details, and the current projects. Take your time reviewing it, and if you have any questions, I'll be in the office next door. He left quietly, closing the door behind him. I sat down in the chair, still unable to believe what was happening, and opened the folder. On the first page was my promotion contract. When I saw the proposed salary, my heart skipped a beat. It was 5 times what I had earned at my previous main job. Tears welled in my eyes and rolled down my cheeks. It felt too good to be true. With that kind of salary, I could not only cover our modest apartment, but even consider moving to a safer neighborhood, buy the girls new clothes, maybe even start saving for college. The door opened gently, and James walked in with 2 cups of coffee. Seeing my tears, he set them down and quickly approached. Sarah, what's wrong? Is something not right? I shook my head, unable to speak, and simply pointed to the contract. James frowned in confusion. If you feel the compensation is insufficient, we can talk about insufficient? I finally found my voice and laughed through the tears. James, it's more than I've ever earned. Oh, he exhaled, relaxing. I wasn't sure what your salary had been before. and I didn't want to offer less than your worth." "Less?" I laughed again, this time more shakily, almost hysterically. "James, with this salary, I can pay off a mortgage I couldn't afford after Michael died. I can buy the girls proper clothes. I can—" My voice cracked and I covered my face with my hands. James crouched down beside my chair. "Hey," he said gently. "It's okay. You deserve this. You're a talented designer, Sarah. You always have been, and I'm paying you exactly what your talent is worth." "You're too kind to me," I whispered. "No," he shook his head. "I'm just correcting an injustice. You've never been given what you truly deserve, and this isn't kindness, Sarah. It's what you've earned, with your work, with your talent." He stood and walked over to the window, giving me a moment to collect myself. "I expect you to earn every cent," he said with mock sternness. "So wipe those tears and get to work, creative director. We have plenty of projects waiting for your brilliant eye." I smiled, grateful that he didn't turn my emotional breakdown into a big drama. "Thank you, James. Really, thank you." "No need to thank me," he smiled back. "Now, if you're ready, I'd like to introduce you to the team." The first days at the new job were both thrilling and exhausting. I threw myself into the projects, making up for lost time and trying to build a connection with the team. Most of the designers were about half my age, armed with modern training and fluent in the latest trends, but my experience and intuition made up for the gaps in tech skills. On the fourth day, disaster struck. I was working on a presentation for a major client, an international hotel chain in the middle of a rebranding campaign. The board meeting was scheduled for the next morning, and James had entrusted me with the lead role, even though I was still new to the company. Toward the evening, I submitted the final files for printing and uploaded them to the shared project folder. Later that night, checking my email before bed, I realized in horror that I had uploaded a draft version, with critical errors in financial projections and the wrong fonts, which the client had already rejected in a previous meeting. Worse, this was the version that had already been printed for the entire board. I immediately called James, panic flooding over me. "James, I made a terrible mistake." My voice trembled. "I sent the wrong version of the presentation." "How bad is it?" he asked calmly. "It has incorrect ROI figures and fonts the client explicitly rejected. I was working on revisions, but I accidentally saved the draft in the shared folder." James was silent for a second. "I'm coming to get you," he said firmly. "We'll fix it together." "But it's almost midnight," I protested. "And the girls—" "Emily is 16. She can look after Lily for a couple of hours. This is important, Sarah. The presentation's at 9. He arrived 20 minutes later. I left Emily brief instructions and promised to be back before dawn. Then James and I drove back to the office. I couldn't stop apologizing the entire ride. "This is unforgivable. I should have double-checked. You trusted me with such a big project, and I—" "Sarah," James interrupted gently, "you've been working 16-hour days, adapting to a new job, and trying to be a great mom at the same time. Mistakes happen. We'll fix it. Together." We spent the entire night at the office, correcting the presentation and printing new materials. James worked beside me, encouraging and supporting, never once showing anger or disappointment. By 7 a.m., everything was ready. We even had time to shower in the office locker room and change into fresh clothes James kept there, just in case. When the board members and client reps walked into the conference room, I was exhausted but prepared. The presentation went smoothly. The client was pleased, and no one suspected the all-nighter we had just pulled. After everyone had left, James came over with a smile. "You were amazing." "I almost blew the whole thing," I reminded him. "But you didn't," he shrugged. "And that's what matters. By the way, one of the board members asked about you, said your approach to branding was the freshest he's seen in a long time." I blushed at the compliment. "He's just being polite." "You've always been too modest," James shook his head. "Now go home and get some sleep. You've earned it." On Friday, I received my first paycheck. Staring at the amount on the banking app, I still couldn't believe this was real. The first thing I did was pay 2 months of rent in advance, clear a few urgent debts, and decide it was finally time to do something I'd been promising Lily for weeks: buy her some new clothes. After work, I drove to her school. She got into the car with slumped shoulders and that dull look in her eyes that had become her usual expression since starting at the new school. "Where are we going?" she asked when she noticed I wasn't driving toward home. "Shopping," I replied, trying to hide the excitement in my voice. "I got my first paycheck." Lily's eyes widened. "Really? We can buy something new?" "Not just something, a whole wardrobe," I smiled, watching her face light up with hope. We went to the mall, not the most luxurious in the city, but decent, with good teen clothing stores. I told Lily there were no budget limits, within reason of course, and she could pick anything she liked. At first, she moved through the store hesitantly, gently touching fabrics, checking price tags, choosing only the cheapest options. But slowly, when I insisted that yes, we really could afford it, she began to choose more boldly: jeans, t-shirts, sweaters, dresses, things she actually wanted, not just the ones we used to settle for. In the fitting room, she put on a pair of new jeans and a stylish blouse, and I watched as her shoulders straightened and her eyes lit up when she saw her reflection. "Mom, I look normal," she whispered, turning in front of the mirror. My heart clenched at those words. For a 12-year-old girl, looking normal shouldn't be a distant dream. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," I hugged her from behind, meeting her gaze in the mirror. "You've always been beautiful, but now your outside finally reflects the beauty that's always been inside." We bought so many clothes we could barely carry all the bags. At home, Lily put on a full fashion show for Emily, modeling each outfit with growing confidence. Emily clapped and whistled, cheering her on, while I sat on the couch watching them, feeling the weight on my shoulders lift. If only slightly. For the first time in months, I saw Lily so lively, so genuinely happy. But when Sunday evening came and she began preparing for Monday, her mood shifted again. She laid out her new clothes on the bed, but her movements became tense and her face tightened. "What is it, sweetheart?" I asked, sitting beside her. "Aren't you happy with your new clothes?" "I am," she nodded. "Really happy. It's just—" She trailed off, tugging at the sleeve of her new sweater. "Just what?" "What if they laugh anyway?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "What if it's not the clothes? What if it's me?" I wrapped my arms around her, feeling her little body tremble with fear. "Listen to me, Lily," I said softly but firmly. "It was never about you. You're smart, beautiful, and kind, and if someone can't see that, it's their problem, not yours." "But they still make it my problem," she whispered. "Every day." I didn't know what to say, because she was right. The cruelty of others was turning her life into a nightmare, no matter who was at fault. "Mom," Lily pulled back and looked into my eyes. "Please, don't walk me to school tomorrow." "What? Why?" "Because—" She looked down. "They already think I'm a baby. If my mom drops me off at school, it'll just give them one more reason to laugh." I wanted to argue, to say it was silly, that I should be by her side, protecting her, but I saw the determination in her eyes and realized she was trying to find her own way to cope. "Okay," I agreed reluctantly. "I'll drop you off around the corner if that's what you want, but promise me you'll call if anything happens." She nodded, and I saw gratitude in her eyes, gratitude that I respected her choice, even if I didn't like it. Monday began with a knot in my stomach. I dropped Lily off a block away from school, just like she'd asked, and watched her walk down the street with her head held high, wearing new jeans and a stylish jacket. She looked like any other normal kid, but I knew how hard she was working to wear that mask of confidence. I couldn't concentrate all day at work. My thoughts kept returning to Lily, surrounded by the same kids who had treated her so cruelly before. Would new clothes make a difference? Or was she right? Maybe it wasn't about clothes at all, but about being new, being different, being an outsider in an elite social circle where she didn't belong. I made mistake after mistake, errors I never would have made otherwise. The wrong font here, the wrong color there, typos in copy I was supposed to proof. By noon, I was ready to scream from the tension. James noticed it when he came by to discuss a new project. He closed my office door and sat across from me. "What's going on, Sarah? You're not yourself today." I sighed, too drained to pretend. Lily went back to school today, in her new clothes. I'm worried about how it's going. James nodded, understanding. The same school where they bullied her? Yes, I smiled without joy. I bought her new clothes hoping it would help. But what if it doesn't? What if they just find a new reason to make fun of her? Kids can be cruel, James agreed. But they're also fickle. New clothes might shift their perception. I hope so. I glanced at the clock. 3 more hours until school ends. Feels like they'll never pass. James tapped his fingers thoughtfully on the table. "I have an idea," he said suddenly. "Let's take a lunch break and then pick Lily up from school together." "What?" I looked at him surprised. "But don't you have meetings this afternoon?" "I'll reschedule them," he shrugged, as if it were the easiest decision in the world. "This is more important." "James, you don't have to." "I know," he smiled, "but I want to. Besides," he added with a mischievous glint in his eyes, "it gives me a chance to take the Phantom out for a spin." "The what?" "My Rolls-Royce Phantom," he laughed at the look on my face. "Yes, I know it sounds pretentious, but it mostly sits in the garage. It deserves a little sunlight now and then." I started to object, saying it was too much, that Lily would be embarrassed by such attention, but James was insistent. "Sarah, let me do this. Not for you if your pride won't allow it. For Lily, for a child being tormented by her peers." There was something in his voice that made me pause. "You've been through this too, haven't you?" I asked quietly. James looked away, and I saw a shadow of old pain pass through his eyes. 3 years in middle school. I was too skinny, too quiet, too obsessed with art. A perfect target. "I'm sorry," I said, touching his hand. "It was a long time ago," he shrugged. "But I remember what it's like to be the outsider. And if we can change that for Lily, even just for a day, let's do it." I agreed, still unsure, but moved by his gesture. At 1 o'clock, we went down to the underground garage, where the Rolls-Royce Phantom was waiting, a majestic car in dark silver, so luxurious it looked out of place among the ordinary vehicles. "It's impressive," I said, shaking my head as James opened the passenger door for me. "Sometimes you have to make an impression," he winked, "especially on people who think they're better than everyone else." The drive to Lily's school took about 20 minutes. Along the way, James told me stories about his travels, strange clients, and how his little studio had grown into an international company. "By the way, I prepared something for our visit," he said, turning down the road to the school. "Last night, I asked my assistant to check which schools in the area we've worked with. Turns out we launched an art support program a few years ago, and Lily's school was one of the beneficiaries. I contacted the administration as a representative of Mitchell Design Group to evaluate the effectiveness of our sponsorship. It's standard language in our contracts." "So they know who you are?" I asked, impressed by his planning. "They just know a representative from Mitchell Design Group is coming," he smiled. "I doubt they're expecting the CEO, and they're certainly not expecting me to show up with the mother of one of their students. Hopefully that gives our visit a bit more weight." By the time we pulled up to the school, the day was ending, and kids were streaming out of the building. James parked the Rolls-Royce directly in front of the entrance, ignoring the staff-only parking sign. "We can't park here," I said nervously. "I'd love to see them try and ticket a Rolls-Royce," he smirked. We stepped out of the car, and I immediately sensed the shift in atmosphere. Parents waiting for their kids started whispering and pointing in our direction. The teachers by the door froze with wide eyes. And then I saw Lily. She came out of the building with her head down, her new, but already rumpled clothes clinging to her small frame. Even from a distance, I could tell the day hadn't gone how she'd hoped. Lily, I called, waving. She looked up, and her eyes widened in shock when she saw me standing beside a Rolls-Royce and a well-dressed man. For a moment, she froze, unsure what to do. Then she slowly started walking toward us, as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Mom! She looked from me to James to the luxury car. What are you doing here? We came to pick you up, I smiled, hugging her. Lily, this is James Mitchell, my boss and an old friend. James reached out a hand with a sincere smile. Nice to meet you, Lily. Your mom has told me a lot about you. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a group of girls, Amanda among them, Lily's main tormentor. They stood there with their mouths open, watching the scene unfold. But the real shock came when Principal Collins emerged from the building, accompanied by several teachers. When he saw us, he took a step forward, and then, upon recognizing James, his expression shifted, part awe, part alarm. Mr. Mitchell, he exclaimed, hurrying toward us. What an honor! I didn't expect the founder of the company to visit in person. I turned to James, impressed by how well his plan had worked. To be honest, Principal Collins, this visit isn't just to evaluate our charitable program, James said in an even tone. I'm also here to pick up the daughter of a good friend and colleague, Sarah Thompson. He placed a hand on my shoulder, and for the first time, I saw Collins actually look at me. Recognition, and then visible shock, flashed across his face. Mrs. Thompson? He looked like he'd seen a ghost. You know Mr. Mitchell? We're old friends, I said with a faint smile, savoring his confusion. And now I'm the creative director at his company. Principal Collins turned pale. I had no idea. That's wonderful. Yes, it is, James agreed, and his voice grew colder. Funny how such a remarkable talent went unnoticed when she was right in front of you, especially given that her daughter attends this school. The principal began mumbling apologies and explanations, but James cut him off with a wave of his hand. I think it's time we head out. He turned to Lily with a warm smile. Ready, Lily? How about some ice cream on the way home? Lily nodded, still stunned. James opened the rear door of the Rolls-Royce for her with the elegance of a true gentleman. Then he circled around and opened the passenger door for me, leaving the principal and teachers standing in the schoolyard, mouths agape. As we pulled away from the school, Lily finally found her voice. What was that? She asked, still in shock. I turned to her. That was James showing a few people just how wrong they were. You really work for him? Lily looked from me to James, who was driving with effortless grace. With him, James corrected with a smile. Your mom is one of the most talented people I've ever known. I'm lucky she agreed to join my company. And they really didn't know? Lily shook her head. The principal looked like he swallowed a lemon. I laughed, feeling the tension of the last few weeks start to melt away. I think that was the point, right, James? Not exactly, he winked at me. The point was to remind them that you never know who someone truly is, or who they might become, and that you should never judge a book by its cover. Or a person by their clothes, Lily added quietly. Exactly. James smiled at her in the rearview mirror. Now, how about that ice cream? I know a great place not far from here. As we drove through the city in the luxurious Rolls-Royce, I looked at James, so comfortable in his skin, a man who knew exactly who he was and what he was worth. And for the first time in a long while, I felt there might be hope for me to find that same confidence. Not because of the fancy car or prestigious job, but because I had finally met someone who saw my worth, even when I couldn't. And in the rearview mirror, I saw Lily's face lit up by a smile I hadn't seen since we lost Michael. And for that smile, I was ready to face whatever changes life threw at us, even if it meant opening my heart again. After our dramatic appearance at Lily's school in James's Rolls-Royce, life took on a whole new color. The next morning, I dropped Lily off at school with some trepidation, bracing for any reaction, from mockery to envy. But what happened exceeded all my expectations. As we entered the school grounds, the principal's secretary, the same woman who barely acknowledged me a month ago, greeted us with professional politeness. "Good morning, Mrs. Thompson. Principal Collins asked about you last week. He'd like to discuss Lily's progress when you have a moment." I raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "Progress? She's only been here a couple of months." "The art teacher noticed her work, says she has potential," the secretary replied formally, without flattery. "And her latest science project received high marks." Lily blushed slightly at the unexpected praise. I knew she had worked hard on that project with Jenny. Lily looked at me skeptically, and I just shrugged. It was the same dress she had worn yesterday, a simple light blue mall dress, nothing special. Principal Collins's office had transformed. The ashtrays were gone, the air smelled of freshener, and Collins himself greeted us standing, with a smile that looked glued to his face. "Mrs. Thompson, so wonderful to see you," he said, shaking my hand energetically. "And young Miss Thompson, I hope you're settling in well at our school?" Lily looked at him as if he'd grown a second head. "Not really," she replied honestly, "considering I get bullied every day." The principal froze. His smile faltered, but quickly returned. "Bullied? That must be a misunderstanding. Who could possibly mistreat such a talented young lady?" "Amanda Pierce and her friends," Lily crossed her arms. "The same ones I told you about 3 times, and you said it was my fault because I don't fit in." I was proud of my daughter's courage. A week ago, she wouldn't have dared speak so directly to a principal. "There must be some miscommunication." Collins spread his hands. "I would never say something like that. Here at our school, we value diversity and strive to create an inclusive environment for all students." I wanted to argue, to remind him of his own words, suggesting we find a school with a more appropriate demographic. But at that moment, the office door opened, and James walked in. "Hope I'm not late," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The principal's face lit up like a Christmas tree. "Mr. Mitchell, what an honor. We weren't expecting." "I sent an email yesterday evening about my visit," James said as he gracefully took the seat beside me. "As I mentioned, I'd like to discuss the bullying situation at your school." Collins swallowed hard. "Bullying? But we don't—" "You do," James interrupted firmly. "And Lily Thompson's case is just one of many, I suspect. As a donor who has invested significant funds into this school's educational programs, I'm deeply concerned that my support is going to an institution where social discrimination thrives." The principal turned pale. His smile vanished completely. I'll be organizing an independent commission to investigate all reported bullying cases over the past 3 years, James continued in the same calm but unyielding tone. "Anonymous surveys will be conducted, especially among students from low-income families. The results will directly affect future funding." By this point, the principal looked ready to faint. He stammered apologies, promises to look into the matter immediately, to punish those responsible, to do everything in his power to ensure this never happened again. James listened politely, nodding from time to time, but his eyes remained cold. As we left the office, Lily asked quietly, "Will you really do the investigation?" "Absolutely," James nodded. "I always keep my promises, and bullying is something I take very seriously." He leaned toward her and winked. "Want to bet Amanda and her little gang suddenly turn into the nicest girls in school?" Lily giggled, her eyes shining with a childlike light I hadn't seen in ages. The changes came slowly. A week after our visit with James, Lily noticed that Mrs. Parker, her homeroom teacher, had started stepping in when Amanda and her friends began their usual taunts. Not harshly, but at least she wasn't pretending not to see anymore. 2 weeks later, Lily told me that one of her classmates, Jenny, a quiet girl and an outsider herself, had asked if they could work on a science project together. She said she saw my drawings and thought I was good at it, Lily told me, surprised. By the end of the month, things had noticeably improved, though it was still far from perfect. Amanda and her closest friends had stopped actively bullying Lily and instead switched to passive-aggressive ignoring. But other students, seeing that Lily was no longer an acceptable target, began treating her more normally. "You won't believe this," Lily said one day, coming home with a slight smile. "Amanda invited me to her birthday. Not personally, of course. Her mom made her invite the whole class. I overheard her complaining to Brittany about it. But still, weird, right?" "It's interesting to observe how the school hierarchy is shifting," Lily remarked one evening while working on her homework. "Some teachers now actually notice when I raise my hand, whereas before, they acted like I wasn't there. But most kids still only talk to me when they have to. They know my mom works with Mr. Mitchell, the guy who funds the school, and they're afraid of trouble, but that doesn't mean they actually want to be friends." I felt both proud of her insight and saddened by the cynicism coming from a 12-year-old. Things at work were going brilliantly too. I'd found my rhythm in the new role, and my ideas were gaining more and more recognition in the company. James and I spent a lot of time together, not just in the office, but after hours as well, planning campaigns over dinner or discussing concepts with a glass of wine. I couldn't help noticing that our relationship was gradually moving beyond strictly professional boundaries. We laughed at the same jokes, understood each other without needing to explain, and sometimes, when I caught his gaze, I felt a warmth spread through me that I hadn't felt in a long time. One evening, while we were working late in his office on a new ad campaign, James suddenly put his documents aside and looked at me seriously. "Sarah, I want to make you an offer." My heart skipped a beat. "An offer?" "Move in with me," he said simply. "I have a huge house outside the city, with separate rooms for the girls. Emily could attend a private school nearby. It's one of the best in the country. And there's an excellent art school for Lily, if she's interested." I sat in silence, stunned. "Don't look at me like that," he said with a faint smile. "I'm not trying to buy you or push myself on you. It's just, why stay in that cramped apartment when there's a better option?" "James, I can't. It's too much." "Why?" He leaned in. "Because you're afraid of losing your independence? Or because you're not ready for a relationship?" "Both," I admitted. "James, I'm only just starting to find my footing again. I'm only just beginning to feel like I can provide for my children on my own. If I move in with you, I'll be dependent again. And that's not fair to you." "You wouldn't be dependent," he said, taking my hands in his. "You'd still work, still earn your own income. I'm just offering you a roof over your head." "And what if we fight? What if you become disappointed in me as a partner? Then I'm left without a home, without a job, and my kids suffer all over again." He let go of my hands and leaned back in his chair. "I didn't think of it like that," he admitted. "But you're right. It's a risk. Besides," I added quietly, "I don't know if I'm ready for a relationship. Michael, his death still feels too fresh." James nodded. "I understand. And I'll wait, as long as it takes. But the offer stands. No pressure, no expectations." That night, I couldn't sleep, turning his words over in my mind. Part of me wanted to say yes, the image of a spacious home where everyone had their own space, better schools for the girls, financial stability. It was all incredibly tempting. But another part of me was afraid of such a drastic shift, afraid of losing the control and independence I had fought so hard to regain. In the morning, I told the girls about James's offer over breakfast, curious to hear their opinions. Lily's reaction was predictable. She was thrilled. "Mom, that's amazing. Have you seen his house? I bet there's a pool and a huge garden and a private art school. I've always wanted to do more drawing." But Emily was silent, poking at her cereal with her fork. "What do you think, Em?" I asked gently. She looked up, and in her eyes I saw a mix of disappointment and anger. "I think we're selling out," she said sharply. "Or, more accurately, you are." "Emily," Lily exclaimed. "How can you say that?" "Am I wrong?" Emily pushed her bowl away. "Mom barely knows this man. Sure, they worked together 10 years ago, but now he just shows up out of nowhere, offers her a job she's barely qualified for, and now he wants us to move in with him. And what does she get in return? A roof over our heads? A chance at a better life? Lily suggested. At what cost? Emily turned to me. Mom, you said independence was the most important thing, that we have to solve our problems ourselves, and now you're ready to throw yourself into the arms of the first rich man who shows you interest? Her words hurt, but there was some truth in them. I haven't made any decisions yet, Em, I said calmly. That's exactly why I'm asking for your opinion. Well, here's my opinion. We've made it on our own so far, and we'll keep making it. We don't need handouts from your rich boyfriend. He's not my boyfriend, I protested, but Emily had already pushed back her chair. Doesn't matter. Do whatever you want. You're an adult. Just don't expect me to be thrilled about becoming someone's charity case. She grabbed her backpack and stormed out of the apartment, slamming the door behind her. She's just jealous, Lily snorted. No, sweetie, I shook my head. She's just protecting our family the way she thinks is right. In the days that followed, the tension at home only grew. Emily and Lily argued constantly. Emily saw James's offer as a threat to our independence, while Lily viewed it as a chance for a better life. Their conflict mirrored my own internal struggle. After a week of thinking and watching the growing rift between my daughters, I made a decision. I invited James over for dinner at our place to discuss his offer with both girls present. James, I really appreciate your offer, I said, once we were all seated at the table. But I can't accept it. His face fell slightly, but he nodded. I understand. Your independence matters to you. It's not just that, I said, glancing at my daughters. We're a family, and decisions this big need to be made together, with everyone's voice heard, and right now, we're not ready for that kind of change. Emily exhaled with visible relief, while Lily pouted. But, I continued, I do have a counteroffer. All three of them looked at me with curiosity. I want to start my own initiative, a charitable foundation to support kids from underprivileged families, to provide them with clothes, school supplies, and access to extracurricular programs. And James, I'd like your company to be our first sponsor, not as a favor to me, but as an investment in real, necessary work. James smiled, his eyes lighting up with that special look he had when he was genuinely inspired. That's an amazing idea, Sarah. Of course we'll support your foundation. I think you'll change a lot of lives. We could design school clothes, Lily burst out. I could draw the designs. And I could handle logistics, Emily added unexpectedly. I'm good at planning and organizing. I looked at my daughters in surprise and pride. For the first time in a long while, they were excited about the same idea. A year has passed since the day I chose not to move in with James, but instead to launch my own charitable project. A year filled with challenges, small victories, and the first steps towards something meaningful. The New Beginnings Foundation was officially registered 3 months after that family dinner. James helped with initial funding and legal guidance, though the paperwork alone took nearly 6 months due to bureaucratic delays. We used that time to refine the concept and plan every detail. The process was far more complicated than I had expected, but each obstacle we overcame brought us closer to our dream. Once all the documents were finalized, we began small, with a clothing drive in 3 local schools. Only 15 families showed up to the first event, but for us, that was already a win. Gradually, as we solved logistical issues and gained experience, we expanded our reach. By year's end, we had a tiny office, just a rented room with 2 desks and 5 regular volunteers, in addition to me and the girls. We developed a 3-year growth plan that included pilot programs for mentoring and creative workshops, scheduled to launch in the next semester. Emily took on the administrative side. She turned out to be remarkably organized and reliable for her age. And Lily began to grow as an artist, sketching ideas for a future line of school clothing. There was still so much work ahead, so many hurdles, so many unknowns, but I knew now that I could face them with my head held high, not alone, but with the support of 2 daughters who had grown into strong, confident young women, and with James, who had shown me that love could be gentle, patient, and unconditional. Michael would always have a place in my heart, my first love, the father of my children. but life had moved on, and it was beautiful in its unpredictability and possibilities. If you enjoyed the story, please support it with a like and comment.